everybody. Welcome to tonight's webinar. Wonderful that you're already here. It's so cool. People are really on time. I really like it. My name is Veronica, and I'm the founder of the Conscious Relationship School. I'm a relationship coach, and one of my specialties is emotions. So I created this 5-part series about emotions, and today is already session 4. It will be sadness and grief today. And I also realized that, of course, in the UK here, we have the big event coming up. It's the Queen's birthday. So everyone who is here tonight and not in the pub, respect. Most of my friends are in the pub, actually. But yes, I hope that you'll learn a lot. And as always, if you have any questions, please feel free to use the chat, or of course also use this little raise hand button, or just unmute yourself. So I'm really happy to answer all the questions. So I'm going to share my screen now and guide you through a presentation. And yes, I hope that we're going to have a good session today about sadness and grief. And it was actually really interesting because I was not feeling any sadness today. And I was like, all right, I have this topic coming up. But yeah, for me, I'm very familiar with the emotion of sadness. It plays sort of like a big role in my life. So I've explored a lot around it, and I hope that I can explain to you a little bit, what's going on, why we feel sadness, and, just how can we integrate it more into our life and, don't push it away so much. Because as all the emotions, it's just one flavor of life. It's just an experience as well. And if we take a little bit the judgment away, and if we learn how to feel it, then already it is much less scary in our lives. Yes, so there we go. And I've created this conscious relationship roadmap just to give you an idea. If you're, on the way to wanting to have better relationships, what are different areas that you can work on? And the topic we talk today is station number 4, which is emotional maturity, which is obviously so important because it can get very complicated if we don't know what to do with our emotions, but also if we suppress our emotions, we can't connect with other people. So it's really, really important to, do some healing, do some understanding. But then, of course, other parts of relationship work is compassionate communication. That's like the foundation of all relationship skills, having healthy boundaries, knowing where you end and the other person begins. Of course, understanding men and women, knowing about your femininity, masculinity, very important. Relational psychology to understand relationships in general and the dynamics that play out, and they are everywhere the same, believe me. And of course, having your own self-awareness about what is my pattern, why do I react the way that I do, what's my experience in the past and in the childhood. And then hopefully we can have the conscious relationship where we actually relate with awareness, and where we also make the relationship a place of inner healing. And that's my goal when I work with clients or when I also teach. This is what I want to show you how to do that. Alrighty. And so the agenda for today will be, we're recapping what are emotions. So as I said, this is a series, so there have already been 3 sessions. If you're interested, you can find them all on my website. The links are also posted in the comments of this event page. But I'll just do a little recap, just if someone hasn't been there before. Then why sadness is a normal part of life. The importance of crying as a healthy release. So I really want to stress that because a lot of people block themselves from crying, and actually you are like stopping your own body from, helping you like release the intensity of the emotion. And what to do when you are grieving. So we'll talk a little bit about grief and how to manage your sadness in a conscious way. Exactly. And of course, as always, you can join this presentation if you want. You can either scan this QR code or go to menti.com and put in the code, and then you can answer questions, but you don't have to. It's just an offer if you're interested in that. And the instructions are always up here. All right. And yeah, for all those who don't know me yet, so my name is Veronica. I'm originally from Germany. I'm living in the UK with my partner, Matt. And yes, I'm a relationship coach, which means I work one-on-one with clients, helping them have better relationships. But I also do emotion coaching. So all the topics that we talked about today, I also help people with. And I do all my work online. So, if you need any help, you're happy to reach out. There is my website here. And I also post all my links in the comments. So there you go. So you can find me online. Yes, and my background is emotional healing. So before I was focusing on relationships, I was helping people heal from childhood trauma. So I've learned a lot about emotions from this experience, and that's why I also created this series, because I realized that people are very confused about it and very overwhelmed because no one tells us, unfortunately, but it's such a big part of our life. So yeah, I hope that this will help you. And yeah, everyone who is regularly here, welcome. Let me just maybe check who's here. I think I saw Erin. Oh, Nicole. Hello, Margaret, Abir. Awesome. Everyone else who I'm not saying, Maru, I think is also Wendy. Yeah, super cool that you guys are all here as well. All right. I'm just gonna mute you here. Yes. Okay, cool. So let's get into it then. Let's start with the recap. The purpose of emotions. What are emotions? So Mancha says hello. Hello, nice to have you. Yes. All right. So emotions are here to guide and protect us. So that's the most important thing. So feeling is not random. Whenever a emotion is popping up, it means that something is happening. So as how you can imagine is that it's like the way your being, your consciousness is communicating with you through emotions, and basically all the time tells you you're on the right path, you're on the wrong path, you're on the right path, or you're on the wrong path. Rebecca, I'm constantly like muting yourself. Can you please stop unmuting yourself? Thank you. And sorry guys, I'm doing some managing. It's sometimes a little bit exhausting. Yes, and basically on a healing journey, because how people usually get interested in emotional work is that they have some really, really strong emotions, really strong anxiety, strong anger, strong sadness, and they are totally overwhelmed. They feel like they can't function. And of course, it's terrible because it can really have such big impacts. But essentially, a part of yourself is giving you a message saying, hey, something is not going right. There's old wounds that are not healed, like you're essentially walking around with a broken leg and you're just not paying attention, or you're in the completely wrong job, with the completely wrong person. This is not good for you. And that's when, of course, the emotions can feel so tormenting. But when we follow them and really listen to them, usually they have always very important things to tell ourselves. But of course, I don't want to minimize anyone's pain. And I know that it can be so hardcore, but this is also, how I learned about emotions, because I have very strong emotions and I used to really, really suffer. But that's why I learned so much about it. And I can tell you also the good news that when you really do this and when you really practice, because it's like a skill, you got to practice it, it becomes easier and easier. And then actually the more, beautiful aspects of emotions also show themselves. Because of course, also, we talked also about suppressing. When you're suppressing uncomfortable emotions, at some point, you will also suppress the beautiful emotions, that we all want, like joy, gratitude, ecstasy, connection, all this, because it's like a pipeline. If we suppress the one thing, you cannot feel the other thing. So this is a little bit, the beauty and also the, what we kind of like opted in this life to experience both ends of the spectrum. And of course, also many people even say that if you don't know what pain is, you don't know what joy is, right? You need the contrast to experience that. All right, so that was a little recap. Oh yeah, Rebecca, yeah, no problem. Don't worry about it. Just want to make you aware. right, and now we have a question, but I don't even know if anyone is here in the presentation, but it's no problem. You guys can also just answer it in the chat. So how often do you cry? And we have 4 answers. We have daily, never, once in a while, and I can't cry. So those are the 4 options. So in the chat, you can just put like either you write it or you put 1 to 4, and then we know it. So let's see. Yeah, Bilal says once in a while. Rebecca, not often. Sonia, once in a while. Florencia, once in a while. Yes. Sijan says once in a while. I'm between once in a while and daily. Mancha says 3. Oh yeah, so there's a lot of once in a while criers here. All right, but that's good. I'm always glad if there's not so many nevers here, because that's not so healthy. All right, cool guys. Yeah, thanks for answering. Nice one. Yeah, that's good. Once in a while. Most important thing is that we, are able to cry and also to let it go, to let it be there. That's really, really good. All right, wonderful. All right, so let's talk a little bit about why sadness is a normal part of life. So I don't know how aware you guys are on the how aware you are of the emotion of sadness, but to me, I feel sadness almost like every day. It's not, that I'm like very depressed every day or something, but like in certain parts of the day, for me is usually like between 5 and 6, I have sort of like a down phase where like sadness bubbles up, also in the evenings usually. So it is really like a part of my life. And Gina says not often enough. Yeah, that's also interesting. And Tess says, I cry once a day and daily. Yeah, wow. And Sishan says, sadness is also a good thing in life. Yeah, I mean, if you have this awareness or perspective, I think it can be very helpful. But I just wanted to start to explain a little bit why it is that we often, or that many people maybe feel a lot of sadness or feel sadness every day. And as I said, it doesn't have to be a big depression, but just like little flavors. So what I always try to drum into people is that our modern life has its really good things, which like materially, in the West, here in the developed nations, we have essentially never had it better, right? The average person's life quality is so high in terms of material things, but in terms of our social needs, actually, we are incredibly poor very often. So, for example, needs like understanding, belonging, community are, eroding. People are living very separate lives, like we live here in England in our very little house together, my boyfriend and I. And we have during the week, because we both work from home, we almost don't see anybody. Our friends are also very busy. And in general, you can tell that people, they lose this thing that, you just visit your neighbors like spontaneously. This is all sort of like slowly eroding. And this is really, really hard on people. Then, of course, also things like purpose. So many people do a job they actually hate, and that is kind of like a form of torture for people, because purpose is really what fulfills us. It's so important. Then, of course, also, what's going on politically, like that many people don't feel like they are in the same reality anymore than other people. Everything is becoming very, how do you say, polarized, and of course, also with technology, there's often a big distance between people. And then one of my teachers always said that touch is one of the most unmet needs today. And, if you're lucky and you're in a loving relationship or you have children, then probably, you will have lots of touch and hug. But I remember so well that, especially with older people, they rarely get touched, especially if their spouse is, already has passed. And for example, I have a physiotherapist, and she said that after the lockdown, an old lady was coming. There was nothing wrong with her, but she says just once a week, I want someone, to touch me and to massage me, because it's never happening. So as you can see, we are a little bit like starving connection-wise. And that is really something that cannot be underestimated, So if you're someone who feels sadness more often or something, this is really a big part of it. And, I don't want to be gloomy, or I don't want you to, to be like, oh, we should all depressed. That's not what I'm saying, but just saying that there's a reason why also, mental health is at the stage where it is and stuff, and we sometimes, I think, forget this because we think that we have created this amazing society and stuff, and we have in many respects, but I think in terms of our emotional and mental well-being, we have to catch up, because this is not working how it is at the moment. Yeah, so just as a little introduction and validation as well. All right. So
apologies for being late, sorry.
No problem. And here in the chat, I don't know if you've seen, but someone asked me, what is their solution for unmet needs? Yes, definitely. I mean, the solution for unmet needs is to meet them, quite literally. But it gets complicated when the social norm does not provide the needs, when essentially you have to make it happen, because this is right now what we are seeing, like, for example, of course you should, if you think, oh my gosh, I'm really missing social needs, one of my big dreams is to live in a community so that I actually see people just very relaxed on a daily basis, where I don't have to make a date, but I can just see them. So I think my friend Nicole is here, and we lived together like this when we were in Portugal last year, and it was so beautiful because we were, I think for the first 6 weeks, we didn't even have each other's number. We were
sorry, I'm late. Veronica, sorry.
All right, no problem. We were just seeing each other, and so it was so nice, and who has this anymore now, right? But yeah, so definitely there's something to do about unmet needs, but we gotta do it ourselves. And of course, it's much, much, much better if society already has all these structures in place, because then life is not so complicated. So I hope you could follow me there. All right. All right. So then we also, another aspect of this is also that there is a lack of emotional flexibility that many people are having, that it's actually very normal to experience many different emotions in a day. So, for example, when you watch children, you always see that they experience anger, then they go into laughing, then they go crying. It's really, really quickly. And if we would not disrupt it, because most people, as soon as there's an uncomfortable emotion, like, we suppress it, right? We're like, oh, no, I can't have it. And so we start suppressing it. But actually, if we would just like open to the emotion, we would much quicker move through it, and it would just become like a journey essentially, and just like an experience. And this is one of the things that I want to teach you, to be like, okay, what if I just don't brace myself so much against the uncomfortable emotions? What if I just open up more to the experience? Yeah. All right, is everything all right? Oh yeah, don't worry, Georgia. Okay. Oof. Oh, I'm sorry, guys. I don't know what's happening. Maybe some people are having fun. I think, Georgia, just take some deep breaths, and I'm not, we're not like angry at you. We can totally understand that something has happened here. So, I mean, of course, if you're worried about your security, you're super happy to, I think you can just join again the call. That would also be fine. But otherwise, maybe just take some deep breaths and it's all good. All right. Talking about emotions. Maybe this is a preparation for the anger workshop. We can all feel some anger and then we can talk about this. All right, guys. So what do you do when you're sad? So maybe you can also answer in the chat. Yes, Georgia, exactly. Your profile pic is different from the comments before. So someone is imitating your name. Yes, that's totally what's happening. Yes, so relax, Georgia, all is good. All right, so what do you do when you're sad? Yeah, thank you, Michelle. That was really good. I also didn't click. Tess says cry. Nice one. That's really good. Vinod says taking a nap. Nice. Bilal says wait for it to pass. Tess also says listening to music. Vinod says lol, laughing. Aaron says music or YouTube. Yes. Florencia, talk to someone that really can understand and validate my emotions. Oh, that's really nice. Abir says watch sad movies and listen to sad song. Not sure why though, but I feel better doing so. Oh, that's really nice. I feel like you're processing with this. Carol says, oh, go to my allotment. That's really nice. Yes. Wendy says, I normally have to watch a sad movie or music to cry. Oh, that's nice. Rebecca says, right. Oh, that's also beautiful. Yeah, nice one, guys. Very cool. Yeah, all the things you said are so good. Of course, crying, going out into nature. And it's very interesting also that you say that you almost like enjoy maybe watching a sad movie or sad music, because I have the same, that sometimes it's really enjoyable actually to really feel the sadness and really sort of like let it out, because sometimes when I'm like cranky or stressed or something, I have actually been bottling up like sadness, and then through this it can just like release. And of course that sometimes happens when we were not sad but we're just watching like a sad movie like Titanic or something, and then we're just crying and oh, it feels so good afterwards. Yes, exactly. So that's now the next topic that I want to a little bit talk about, is the importance of crying as a healthy release. And I think in this chat there's not so many men, but this is, I think, the most important topic for them actually. So it is so healthy to cry. And there's a little bit this misconception that if I get into it or something, that's really bad, or that I can't stop anymore. If I have children, I should like get them out of the sadness or make them stop crying or something like this. And that's not true, because crying is just a very, very natural emotional release mechanism, and our body is very, very smart, and sometimes we should not like think so much, but just let our body do what it's good at, and that means taking care of ourselves. And it literally helps to get the stuck energy flowing again, because what we talked in session 2 about, that emotion is energy in motion, but very often we just do like this and we suppress it, and then the energy is all stuck. And crying is one of those ways to just release it, And if I work with male clients and they haven't cried for like a long time, I always recommend for them to cry at least once per week, because it is so like, like sometimes the stuff that comes up is really, really incredible, you know. And there's also sometimes very interesting when you also work with the body, because I also have did a yoga teacher training in the past, and my teacher told me that when you do yin yoga, which is when you hold positions really long, and especially if you stretch the hips, so many people, and especially men, start crying because you also, you know, the body like holds tension, like it literally becomes so rigid in order, you know, not to feel those feelings. And so when you stretch certain points, then suddenly people can't hold back anymore. And it's like so interesting. And, you know, that's also something that when you are doing emotional and healing work, I can totally recommend also working more with your body, because it can really like assist you, you know, to break through barriers or to become more also healthy, you know, combining those two elements of healing. And Bilal says, I don't mind crying, to be honest, but for some reason it's very hard for me to cry. I have no idea why. Yeah, this is really, really interesting. So it could be, for example, that before you can even remember, that maybe, you know, at some point someone in your childhood like shamed you for it, you know, that they said, oh, you shouldn't cry, that's bad, or something like this. It could also be that maybe in your family there are some values around that crying is bad, or that just weak people cry. Could also be the opposite, though, that maybe you had a super emotional parent and a part of you was like, no, I'm never becoming like that, because, you know, you thought, oh, they are like really weak, or that they putting like pressure on you, you know. So maybe you said, oh, I never wanna, you know, make it really hard for other people. I'm going to be like the strong one. So that, yeah, also for you, Erin, that could be definitely a thing, this internalized, I'm the strong one, I'm the rock, you know. And what you essentially do in your own psyche is that you, because there is a sad part in all of us, right? But you can push it so far away into your subconscious, like in your, I don't know, basement or whatever. And then there's the sad part, essentially. And Bilal says, once a week is too much for me, though. Yes. Totally. I mean, it is just sort of like especially recommended for people who like, you know, are very, very like stuck with their emotions. But yeah, of course, I can understand. Yes. But something, you know, like, for example, watching sad movies, it's definitely like a good idea sometimes, especially if you're feeling like a bit stuck in life, you know. And instead of sort of like maybe even like trying not to cry, try to cry, you know, try just to make it, to open yourself up a little bit to this experience. And Sishan, can we cry without any reason? So I believe strongly that there's always a reason. Maybe you don't understand the reason. Maybe, you know, you are not so self-aware that you're understanding, but there is always a reason why we are expressing and feeling any emotion. It's not that nothing is random, nothing just happened. But, you know, most people, unfortunately, they are very, very unaware of what's actually happening, you know, that there's maybe a part of them who is really suffering, who really hates what they're doing, you know, that there's a part of them who is not happy with, you know, how you manage your life. So when you do enough sort of like self-awareness work, you will at some point understand why you're feeling what you're feeling. Yes, and so I wanted to also talk a little bit about the subject of men and crying, because of course for them it is like harder to go there. And I work with a lot of men, and I really like that as well. And what I always say to them is that there's actually a way to cry in a very masculine fashion, which I call the warrior's cry. So maybe you have, you know, seen movies like, for example, Lord of the Rings or Braveheart, like all these like sort of like hero movies. And sometimes in these scenes, it's like this really, really like masculine men, you know, like they're really strong and stuff, but then something so heartbreaking happens, and then they cry, but they cry like in a really like proud way, you know, just like sort of like showing how brave it is and how just to be in your raw emotions, you know. And that is like totally masculine, and even, you know, going so far as saying that all emotional work is actually a very, very masculine endeavor, because it is really, really hard work. Like, you know, doing any sort of like therapy, coaching, emotional work, really looking at your own shadows, that takes so much guts. So, you know, for all the men listening, I just want to also validate you that I've done like a lot of shadow work in my life, a lot of internal work, and it's hardcore. You know, whatever you're facing in your inner world is often, you know, much more difficult than the things you may be even experiencing on the outside, you know. So yeah, I would love to also take away a bit the stigma, you know, that it makes you like weak or something like this, and that it's actually like the opposite. And yeah. And the reason why I also want to say this is because very often you can see this tendency that women find it easier to cry and men find it easier to show anger. But of course, it's important to be able to have access to both emotions, because anger is all about boundaries, helping you to express your own boundaries. And yeah, crying, of course, and sadness is about releasing your pain. And both is really important in order to be like a healthy, well-functioning human being. All right. Is there any questions about this? Cool. Yeah, if you want to ask something, just let me know. Yeah, and then of course connected to this is also that some people also cry too much. And what I mean with this is that of course sometimes people are stuck in a loop of helplessness and crying, and that is very often connected when they actually are so disconnected from their own anger that they always cry when they are angry. They always feel sadness when they are angry. And that is like a real loop then, because you will always feel very sad if you cannot hold up your boundaries, if you cannot set your boundaries right. So yeah, it's a loop, right? You are instead of getting angry, you're just crying, so your boundaries get crossed, and then you get more sad because your boundaries get crossed. But of course you cannot, and of course you will also feel anger, but it's so suppressed, so you cry again. You know, it's like a cycle and a cycle and a cycle. So for those people, it's super, super, super important to get in touch with the anger, which I'll discuss in length in session 5. And always know that it's always there, you know, even if it's so suppressed for you, it's always there. And you can always see this in a healing journey, because everyone goes through a big phase of anger, especially if you have been, you know, abused. But even if you just had like quite, you know, standard like childhood negative experiences, there will be a lot of anger, because children are very, very powerless. And it is natural, and they have to suppress their anger, otherwise they can't survive, right? They always get punished if they show too much anger, and all this anger is still inside of you essentially. Yeah, so for all those, you know, if you feel like it's just, you can't stop crying, then for you it's not about understanding the sadness, but going to anger. Yes. Okay. Cool. All right, and now I wanted to talk a little bit about grieving, because I think that this is something that's really important to learn. And unfortunately, in our culture, we have almost no reference points anymore. We don't know anymore. There's no like, you know, rituals, cultural, like a set of rules, you know, how to grieve. Because in most cultures, there's a very, very defined way of dealing with grief, which is of course designed, you know, to help you through this time. Because when you lose someone, you're literally like not able to function on a rational basis, right? And this is also good, because essentially this grieving period should be that, you know, you can forget all the things to do. You can just not function as a rational being for a while, and then you actually process and go through your grief, and then you come out the other side, and then you can start participating in normal life again. That's why most cultures, you know, they have, for example, things like, okay, if someone is died in the family, then the rest of the family will stay at home, doesn't leave the house for a month, and the relatives and neighbors bring food. You know, every day someone checks in, they talk a lot, maybe they sing songs together. You know, that's sort of like one very, I think, standard way of dealing with grief that many cultures still have. But in the West, there's almost like, you know, there's nothing anymore where we can hold on to, and that is really sad, actually. And I think I told this a few times, but I always have to repeat it because it was so shocking to me when I found out that I don't know in which country, I think it's in the US or something, is that now a reason to get antidepressant medication is when you have just lost someone. And I think this shows so much like the hypocrisy and also the incompetence of our mental health system, because how can you be diagnosed with depression if literally your spouse or your child or your neighbor or whoever has died 2 weeks before? This is ridiculous. You don't need antidepressant medication. You need to feel the grief, you know? And I find this unbelievable how, in my opinion, the system is just like taking advantage of people, you know, who have a normal and very healthy expression of grief. I mean, if you're not grieving when you have lost someone, you know, then you're not human, essentially. So I hope that you understand what I mean here. But yes, it is so important that we don't forget that all of this is normal, and that there's nothing wrong with us if, you know, we can't function for a while if we have just lost someone. All right, and Corey, do you want to ask something? Can't you?
When my father died, I was like, yeah, perhaps it was grieving, but I did not really understood that it is a natural process which is also dissolving then at the time. And I was about myself, I did not really function so like before. And therefore I was a little bit afraid that I will never be again happy or something like that, better. And
yeah,
because I was like, yeah. And yeah, that is the question is that then the process by itself going to a better place when you allow?
Yeah, so first of all, like, I want to validate you that I can really imagine, you know, that and that's why these cultural systems are so good, because usually they are set up for a period of time that, you know, already tells you, okay, when my whole family is with me for a month, okay, this month will probably be horrible, right? Or if for 2 months I have to support, that I will already know this is how long most people feel really bad. And yeah, it can really feel like this bottomless pit, and that you never ever feel happy again. But yes, so how all emotions are designed is that at some point, you know, you get better. But of course, this is really a process. And I don't know if you ever heard of this, but there's the 5 stages of grief. So they are denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance. And that's also another thing, is that so many people feel so bad because suddenly, you know, they feel so angry at the person who's died, and they are like, I hate you, you know, you're horrible and stuff. And they are like feeling terrible, that they are like the terrible person. But that's so normal.
Veronica, may I share very quickly?
Yeah.
Thank you, my darling. Yeah, my son died last October. And yeah, so that's it really. And thank you for talking about grief. Yeah, I don't know how I'm doing really, but if you're able to, I don't know really know what to say. I just thought I'd jump in. Yeah, and you know, there's been no support really, you know, like you said, there should be, but there isn't, there hasn't been. But yeah, and also my daughter is not speaking to me either. So I've had 4 bereavements really. My daughter, my grandchildren, and my son. And it's a lot to cope with. And I'm trying to just carry on, be positive. That's how I'm trying to cope. I'm just being positive and trying to keep my vibration up, you know?
Yeah. 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 So first of all, I'm really sorry for your loss, and yeah, I can really imagine that that's really, really intense for you. And yeah, it's crazy, right? That you say, wow, there has been no support, because I think that this is one of the most common experiences. Of course, not everyone, like a child dies, and that's also a bit different and more severe, but even for you know, parents or for peers, for friends and so on. So I think this would be so important that we get this again into our society. But
And also I've been offered antidepressants and I've not taken them. I won't take them. You know,
yeah,
I'm doing it without anything actually, apart from sleeping tablets. I do take sleeping tablets a couple of times a week, couple of times, yeah. But
yeah.
yeah, and yeah, I have got support actually, you know, now, but I certainly didn't in the beginning. But yeah, it's a process, right? And
Yes, exactly.
have you heard of anticipatory grief?
No.
Apparently, if someone's had a long illness, which my son had a very severe illness, you're grieving then, and apparently from what I read on Google, it lessens the grieving process afterwards.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I guess that's a a bit of a different situation if it's more like a process. But I think anyways, in all cases, I think one thing that is so important is that we start to trust a little bit our own being, because as I said, also we have our body, which is very, very wise. Unfortunately, you know, we usually sort of like don't listen to it. And of course, we also have all our natural self, you know, and grieving, yeah, is one of the most natural things, because people have been doing it for so many thousands of years. And it's because we are social animals, because we love each other. And that's why losing someone is grief. Yes, exactly. What grieving literally means, that you are that's a very, very deep sadness that is about losing something. But of course, it could also be that you're grieving because part of your life ends. You know, many people feel grief when they become parents, you know, because of course their young years are essentially over. So grieving also has to do when you become a pensioner, you could grieve, you know. So it's always this deep sadness, because a part of your life is ending, you're losing something you don't have anymore. And but even also anger work, like for example, if you feel very stuck in your grief, that could also be really good for you, you know, that you join like a boxing gym or something, or even you do one-on-one work with someone and you like scream a little bit, just to like get it out. And then afterwards, often after the anger work, you start crying, you know. So because anger is like the cover emotion, and it can be really, really helpful if you're like a little bit stuck. So first you box and you scream, and then then usually tears come, and then you can cry a little bit, and that could also be part of your emotional release work, which I will also talk more in the anger. But as you can see, also the emotions are so connected with each other as well.
I can't cry very much, Veronica. I really wish I could have a good sob.
Yeah, definitely, because that would probably help you, you know, release a lot and find a bit more peace.
Yes,
yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, thanks guys for sharing. It was really vulnerable. And so what's going on in the chat? And Bilal also says, I think that was also before, thinking about it, for me, it's the other way around. I consciously turn sadness to anger, since I'm a very calm person. I feel like anger burns me from the inside. Yes, exactly. That's also a lot what is happening. So as you can see, and the reason why we do this is because for some reason, when we have problem with one emotion, it's always about our childhood. Either we have been shamed for it, or we were made to feel like we are weak. We felt like we couldn't survive if we showed this emotion. So something makes us feel really, really unsafe to like show this. So investigate a little bit, think about how was it for me, you know, my childhood. Or again, we could have had a, or for example, some people can't feel anger because they had a super, super angry person in their life, a parent or something, and they said, I never want to be like you. And so they push away all their anger, essentially.
Mhm.
All right, good. So, all right, so now I want to, in the end, I want to talk a little bit about how to manage sadness in a conscious way. So also a few people have also said, you know, when there's like blockages around tears and stuff, that could definitely be also a very good, you know, topic to go to therapy with, because it's like such a nice anchor point, you know, to be like, why can't I not cry? Like, what's happening there, for example. All right, so when I was naming this presentation, I said caretaking sadness, right? Because that's really, really what it is. Like, I remember so well when I first started to become aware more of my sadness, and I also was working with a therapist back then. It was a few years ago. He said to me, imagine that your sadness is like a child, and you take care of this child, and it needs caretaking. And that, first of all, was such a beautiful metaphor, because I realized that it's not so scary, and I don't have to push it away. Because, you know, as you can see, I also have a very like upbeat part and stuff. So I was also like judging myself for being like sad. But then also, suddenly, if sadness is a child who needs caretaking, it does not, it loses, like you lose the resistance to it, you know. And that's what I call the welcoming mindset. Like, and I would do this with all emotions, you know. I would be like, instead of like this, open yourself up, let it in and feel it. And all the emotions, they lose strength when you pull them closer instead of pushing them away. Because most people, when they feel anything, they just start to be like, no, no, no. And they have this constant phase of like resistance, you know. And resistance is like, it makes life very, very difficult, because you're always like resisting what is, you're resisting yourself, you know, you're pushing against, you're always in this like fighting energy, and it can make life really, really hard. So the opposite of this would be to relax, to accept it, and even to pull it closer. So I hope that makes sense. When I say pull it closer, I literally mean, imagine, you know, you pull it closer. And energetically, we could say that whatever you try to push away, that's fear. And that is like one of the sort of like worst vibrations you can have. And to love is the opposite, to pull something closer to yourself, you know. So sort of like love your sadness, but, you know, not in a way that you indulge in it and that, you know, you sort of like become this like teenage emo or something, but more like in a caretaking sort of fashion. And yes, and then of course, here it's all about to growing the capacity for feeling in general. And this is really a skill. So this is to be trained for like years and years, but the more you do it, the more you relax, and the more you will feel, you will less have this fear, you know, that the emotion will like eat me, or will like consume me, or it will never ever stop. It will lessen, because you realize it always stops, you know, it always changes, even if sometimes maybe for a few hours you feel really intense, but at some point it always shifts. And essentially, this will make you less afraid of life, because that's what I said in the session 2, is imagine you could feel anything, how free you would be in your own life, if you would, because essentially that's all we are afraid of. The only thing we are afraid of is emotion, okay, the one thing, of course, it's still terrible when horrible things happen, but what actually is often the bigger fear is more like, how will we feel if that particular thing happened? And especially, of course, because so many people are so afraid of intimacy and letting relationships in. Why? Because they're afraid of being hurt, right? So they deny themselves of possible years of happiness. Imagine you have a relationship and you would have the best time for 5 years, and then that person would like cheat on you, and it would be horrible. Of course, it's terrible, cheating and all that thing, but what if you could just enjoy those 5 years? But many people would be like, no, I don't even want that 5 years because of the thing that happens. So yes, and here I also wanted to share a little personal story. So I think it was last year when I was in Portugal, actually, my boyfriend and I, we did this practice, which we call the melancholic afternoon, because we both are like, quite like happy-go-lucky people, but we also have melancholic parts, and we have parts that are like rain, and we always listen to this one band and stuff, and so we did this sometimes, that we would just be melancholic together, and it was really, really nice for us, because we realized, okay, we don't actually always have to be so happy. And can someone type something in the chat, please, for me? Because I always lose this chat box. Oh. Yeah, awesome, thank you. Yeah, so here in my the last link here, Melancholic Afternoon, if you want, I read a blog about my experience, so you can read it. It's the last link here, so that yeah, you got, I just wrote about the experience and how it was, if you guys are interested. Yes, okay guys, so that was the end of the webinar today. Yeah, it was a bit of a deep one, and thank you guys for sharing. And yes, if you enjoyed this, I'd be really happy if you would buy me a coffee. It's a really great website where you can support artists and teachers like me. And I also have now a new Google review business page, so I would also be happy if you maybe want to write me a review. And of course, if you're interested in coaching with me, you can find all the infos on my website. So yes, topics like all the emotions, anger, fear, sadness. Like I've did it actually a lot with my clients, that we sort of like went through the emotions, and we talked about how it is, how we can express it more, maybe some more helpful ways of being able also to express what we are feeling, and of course also in the partnership, how can you share your emotions with other people. But also sometimes people are just stuck with like one thing, and they just don't understand what's happening, and that's why coaching can be so powerful. Because I mean, even for me, I work with a lot of experts as well, because when it comes to my own stuff, I'm like blind. It's so hard, to see your own things. Yeah, exactly. And Mary says, where can we write the review? Yes, so do you see the links I posted? It's the third link. It's called Google Review. I can write it, I can post it again here. So it's the third link. Yeah. And
may I ask a question, Veronica? So
yes.
how do you deal with grief then, please? I wasn't sure that you'd answered it, or if you did, I didn't hear the answer.
Yeah, so the one thing about it is to become aware of the stages of grief and let yourself feel all of them. You know the 5 stages of grief?
They were anger, denial, acceptance. What else was it?
I think it was also bargaining.
Right.
Yes. And something else. Yes. Denial, anger, bargaining, depression, acceptance, So
yeah, okay. So then how do you deal with the depression and the acceptance, or the depression side of things, really, without going on tablets? because I'm not going to go on tablets.
Yeah, so the thing about this is that it's more of it's less of a doing, it's less of a being. So, you know, remember when Corey was saying that she had this intense fear that it will like never stop. And that is exactly the thing. So it's really like being with yourself and feeling, you know, just literally just spending time with yourself, writing, journaling, expressing your emotions, talking, and it just takes time. You know, there's like no big quick fix. And of course, when you will really have accepted it, it will just, it's like an energetical shift that happens, but no one can say like when it happens. And of course, you know, something like support groups, that's really good. But also, as I said, like, I don't know how you are with anger, I would really recommend that as well, you know, to find ways to release the anger. Because especially, I mean, I can imagine when, you know, a child dies that you're hating life. I mean, for me, like my uncle died, I was so fucking mad. I was so angry. I was like, what is this shit, you know? And he was, of course, close to me, but like, I really can't imagine how it is with a child. So
yeah. Thank you. So just recognizing it and being with it and loving it, really, right?
I mean, I think that, I don't know how we, like, it's sort of like a split thing, isn't it? Maybe at some point there will come a time when you actually will, you know, maybe will, I don't know, even be grateful, or where you feel something like love, but it's also okay just to hate it.
Oh,
you know?
I am so grateful he's not suffering anymore, and he's at peace, and
All
he's
right.
passed over the rainbow bridge, and he's now with me in the fullness of spirit.
Yeah, no, of course. Then I truly get that. Yeah, that's also the thing that I understand. Yeah. No, that
I'm
makes sense.
seeing it as a positive, really, and I'm also seeing it as a chance for me to grow and heal. And you touched on childhood abuse as well. Yes, it's all of that.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah,
for me,
definitely.
you
Yes.
know, and it was interesting you said how when you can't cry, you know, for me personally, not being able to express emotion as a child, you know, it has an effect, right? You take that into adulthood, right? Unless you deal with it somehow. And that's where I'm at with everything.
Yes, definitely. Definitely. And as I said, that's why I found it so interesting, because many people are like, for example, when you do something like therapy or, you know, get support, it's always really nice to have a goal. So for example, something like not being able to cry could be a really good goal, to be like, okay, wow, maybe someone could help me, that I could get to a stage where I can cry, because that will is like a doorway to a lot of things. You know, they're like, as I said, there's a big reason for why, right? So you could explore it.
So you're saying bring it to therapy, and then what, to process the reasons why you can't cry, to get you to cry. Is that kind of what you're saying there?
Yeah, because do you see that it's like, for example, people come to me with topics like, let's say, I don't know, my partner is snoring and I get so angry at them, right? This is the topic. But then what do we discover underneath this topic is things like, I don't know how to set boundaries in a good way. I actually feel resentment because they never do the dishes. I never felt like love for who I am. Do you see what I mean? It's just like an entry point. So not being able to cry will open the door where you will see so many things that are connected with it. And it's and you will probably realize that a lot of like deeper things have happened, and you know, it will help you sort of like connect with parts of yourself that you maybe have totally forgotten about, you know, little child parts of you, little, you know, feelings that you have forgotten. And it can be a very beautiful journey, you know.
Yeah, I've been doing a lot of inner child work. In fact, I wrote a letter to my toddler the other day. Someone's gifted me an inner child healing course again, and yeah, it's powerful stuff. You know, I'm doing my therapist, my counselor says I'm doing amazingly well. I said, I bet you say that to all your clients. But there's a lot of deep work to do, but I'll get there. I will get there. I'm healing. I'm healed, you know.
Oh, that's really nice. I'm really, yeah, happy for you and send you lots of love.
Thank you. Thank you for broaching the subject as well tonight.
Oh, that's really good. Yes,
Thank you.
guys. Yeah, I also want to invite you, you know, that sometimes, you know, we have these moments when people are sharing and stuff, and that's also, you know, something that we sometimes just have lost in our society because we are also quite disconnected from each other, but also know that sometimes it's good also, you know, to be reminded that what other people go through, and that we can also just be with each other. And there's no reason to rescue anyone, you know, there's no reason to feel like, you know, that you need to help or fix someone, but just being there and listening and being like, yeah, you know, this is also part of our reality in our life together. And that's totally okay. All right, guys. So that was it for today. I wish you a super beautiful evening. Thank you for sticking around. And I'm going to take a little bit of a break because I'm actually going on holiday with my boyfriend. And so, yes, we'll see you in like 3 weeks or so. But you will find, of course, as always, you'll find everything on Meetup. And yeah, I would be super happy if you would support me with a review or with a little coffee. And yeah, I hope you have a super beautiful June. All right. Bye, guys.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Welcome.
Thank you very much.
Have a good holiday.
Oh, thank you. That's really sweet. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. Should I give you my number and we could have a call when you get back?
If you want, you can just send me a message on Meetup. Yeah.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you.
Bye.